Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Stalker, Black Magic Terror, out October 30th on Napalm Records. The album has 9 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. The only way this album could sound more old school is if these guys had a time machine, jumped on it, traveled back to 1985, and released the album then. Everything about this record is old school. The structure, the sound, the vocals, the production. When you listen to this album, you feel like this album has been stuck in a time capsule that somebody just opened it now and we're getting to listen to it. But perhaps the album has been released 30 plus years ago. The structure of the record is very straightforward, very linear, very cohesive. I wasn't expecting anything else, to be honest. For an album that has this sort of sound, which is this speed metal, thrash metal infused, you want the album structure to be simple, to have a very linear, cohesive approach where not much changes from song to song, so that you just blink and the album is gone. Because it moves so fast and the tracks don't really deviate from that path, the album even seems faster. It seems like it's moving at a faster speed. So I like the simplicity of the structure. It plays very well with the overall soundscape that the album has to offer. And that soundscape, like I mentioned, is speed metal with thrash metal influences. That's pretty much obvious as you navigate throughout this album. In some songs you're going to get more of that thrash metal infused experience, and some songs you're going to get less. But it's there. It's there throughout all 9 tracks and allows the album to be a little bit more robust as far as the overall sound is concerned. When you get deeper into it, you have to talk about the guitars, because if you have a speed metal album, there's 2 elements that are become extremely important. The guitars and the vocals. These 2 elements will drive the sound, will drive the tracks, will drive the record, and will determine if the album is really good or really bad. Both of them have to be hitting at all cylinders. And I felt that on this album, the guitars, without a shadow of a doubt, were running at full steam ahead. They never deviated. They had a very similar approach from track to track. They come across very compact, very driven, very aggressive. And when you get to the solos, I was expecting things to slow down. I was really expecting the solos to break down the tracks at times. That was never the case. I actually felt that the solos on this record was like adding fuel to the fire. If the song was fast, when the solo came in, it got even faster. And that is pretty much a constant throughout all 9 tracks on this album. I love how the guitars sound. I love that old school grittiness approach. Very fast, very driven, with incredible solos on every single track. The other element is the vocals. And the vocals, like the guitars, play a very important role. You can't really miss on either one of them for a record like this to work. And they didn't miss on either. The vocals are outstanding. I love what they did with the vocals because they match the intensity, not necessarily the speed, but the intensity that the tracks have musically. So they're fit there perfectly. They're neck and neck together, pushing every single track forward. And I like that diversity that the vocals have. This is a very diverse album as far as the vocal range is concerned. And even with some of the other elements that they use, like backing vocals and how the vocals were overall recorded, it really has this old school feel to it that allows itself to be in the front of the mix, but at the same time feeling like it's coming from behind every other track or everything that's happening within the tracks. So it has a very interesting approach. It feels like it starts in the back seat, but it always finishes in the front seat, in the driver's seat, pushing the track forward. So I love the vocals, and once again, very dynamic, and that's important. Because if you have a record that has this soundscape, that has this simplicity of structure, where everything is very cohesive, very linear, there's not a lot of variations, there's a chance for the album to start to become a little bit repetitive track after track after track. So by allowing the vocals to be a little bit more dynamic, to have a much wider range than I was expecting coming in, that gives the tracks enough changes on a song-by-song basis for them to sound or feel at least different from each other. So I felt that the vocals were really the breaking point that allowed each song to have a more specific style, a more specific approach, but not deviating too much from each other, because musically they're very consistent. Vocally, in some songs you get a different range than you get in others. You still sounds slightly similar. I mean, it's not like he went with clean vocals in one track and harsh vocals the next, but his range is very wide. And he worked that range very well throughout all 9 tracks in order to give the songs the changes that they need. So you have this up and down feel vocally, but very, very linear musically across all 9 tracks. Overall, I really enjoyed this record. I like the old feel that it has. But if you're coming in expecting a very crisp, clean, well-polished record, you're going to walk away feeling disappointed, because this album, like I said, it feels like it's been stuck in a time capsule. It really sounds like something that was recorded almost, it doesn't sound like a demo, but it has a lot of the demo elements, but it has that mid 80s, early 80s speed metal sound to it. I love it because I grew up in that era, so it was almost like I was listening to a record from my youth, even though the record is being released now. So overall, I really enjoyed it, but I understand that the production is not going to perhaps fit everybody's criteria. For me, for an album that has this sound, this overall presence, this overall construction, I think it's perfect. As far as songs are concerned, let's start off with Black Magic Terror. I love the piano opening on this track. Very somber. It gives a great atmosphere, very dark atmosphere to the opening of the track. But you know, once the guitars come in, it's lightning speed is off to the races, and that's exactly what you're going to get from this song. Absolutely relentless. It moves at a very fast pace, almost from the beginning once that intro is done, all the way to the end. The vocals are perfect in the delivery, in the approach, in the range that they have, using some backing vocals. It adds a lot of darkness to the sound. It adds a lot of presence, but not necessarily making the song heavier. But the track really you needed those vocal changes in order to give you this up and down roller coaster feel, because musically it's very steady, it's very linear all the way through. I love the solo, but that's not nothing new because this album is filled with great solos that add a lot of energy to the tracks. Next, Stalker, great bass. Perhaps one of the songs where I felt the bass had a bigger presence. It had more influence into the overall soundscape that this track had to offer. The guitars and vocals are just on parallel with each other. Fast riffs and the vocals match that speed of the riffs. You almost felt like it was a race between the two to see who would get to the finish line first. There is no dip between the verses and the chorus. This is a song that just moves at one speed across both elements. You don't really feel like there's much of a change, at least musically, between them. But the chorus is very catchy and is very hooky. And that is because of the simplicity of the lyrics and how they come across in that chorus by just saying stalker. And the way it comes across with the word stalker, it almost feels like it's recorded in an echo chamber. So you hear stalker, stalker, stalker. And that becomes engraved in your mind the moment you listen to this track. Perhaps one of the songs that has a little bit more of hookiness and catchiness in how it's created and how it's put together, specifically with this chorus and how it sounds musically and then how the vocals are delivered. Another track with another outstanding solo. This one is perhaps one of my favorite solos on the record because I like the energy that it has. I like the impact that it brings to the song. And when you look at the overall construction of this track, it just makes this song very memorable from all the elements. Musically and vocally, it's just a memorable track all around. Last but not least, Iron Genocide. Fast and faster. Those are the two speeds with this track. It really feels that way to me the moment I start listening to it. It just never seems to let go. It's a track that just has an incredible source of strength and power, and it's always moving in one direction. The vocal range on this track is phenomenal. Perhaps one of the vocal ranges on this album that is the most dynamic, that's the widest. Sometimes I was listening to this track and I could feel some King Diamond influences into how the vocals were coming across. Sometimes I could hear some Rob Halford influences in how this track is coming across. So from a vocal perspective, this track is super dynamic, is super wide. It really gives you a full glimpse of the full range at play here, and it makes the song very interesting because musically this track almost doesn't change at all from how it starts to how it finishes. The ups and downs, the roller coaster ride is really provided to you by the vocal range and how it comes across and changing the dynamic of the song. So the song feels like it's moving or changing speeds, but musically it's not. It's only happening on the vocal track. But because it's so wide, it's so dynamic, it really gives you the sense that everything else is changing with it, when in fact it's not really happening. This is it, guys. This is Stalker with Black Magic Terror, out October 30th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.